goals on them. And if you step just a little bit further down, you'll find mine in the same way. And we've done a lot of work, a lot of positive work. And again, I want to repeat myself, but this is the first time Kennedale has ever had a balanced budget. And that's due to a lot of hard work. And quite frankly, I think that in my estimate, someplace around 7 or 8 months work done in about 3.5 months. So I think, and the staff ought to be thanked for what all that they've accomplished. And I'll just say this as an update, you hadn't seen nothing yet. Half a month. So I think, City Manager, do you have any updates for us?
Not at this time, Mayor.
All that they've accomplished. Good, sir. And I'll just say this. Okay, last item on reports and announcements, number 3, financial reports for the city from the Finance Director, Ms. Annie Lemure.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, city manager, citizens. I prepared the financial report for July, and I was late in closing the books this month, and so your financial reports were late. That's the first apology. And the second one is, I'm sorry that there was an error on the financial report and you did get a second copy. In terms of the financial report, most of our funds have net income, and those are shown in green. And then the ones that are in net loss position are in red. So I am looking at Fund 4, and I believe that there's an error in the income line. And I'm doing a deep dive into that to determine that I believe the income went to another fund. And so I am looking into that one. On page 3 of your financial report, there are 3 funds that have, they're showing net loss for this year. But what you don't see is that the income was received in prior years and the expenses in this year. So none of these 3 funds cause me any concern. And there's no other funds on here that cause me any concern. So Fund 4, I believe we have something in the books that I need to adjust, and the rest of the funds I believe are okay. I've also included for your review the Economic Development Committee financial report, and there's nothing on here that's causing any concern. And you'll see that there is net income for the year at this point in the year of about $250,000. I've also included a cash balance statement that some of the council members have requested. And I've identified any analysis, variance analysis for items where there's more than $100,000 of change since the beginning of the year. And then the last report that I provided for you is just a debt overview that shows when the payments will occur between now and 2040 for all of our long-term bond and note indebtedness. Are there any questions or comments?
I'd like to make one comment. The city council, myself, and the city manager gets a monthly copy of this budget, and it's not really a budget. It's stated numbers that are hard in nature. So if you wish to see them, we can make them available for you, no problem whatsoever. Personally, at the amount of money it takes to run a city, I think you should be interested in them. And I certainly would like to see them. And I want to comment on that being the first time ever that that's happened. We always got a memo budget. This is not a memo. So again, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You know I hate red, right?
I do know you hate red,
Okay.
but in sometimes red can mean good things.
Can you explain Fund 34, 35, and 41?
Fund 34 is Laos money, Laos being law enforcement officer standard education. And it's money that we receive from the state of Texas. So monies were received in prior years in the amount of about $4,000. And yet the expenditures did not occur in prior year. So the expenditures are occurring this year. This year's grant was in the amount of about $1,400. And so we're spending this year's money plus prior year money. The person that makes the determination on what these funds will be spent for is our chief of police, Mike Holguin. And Mike and I have been working very closely on these funds. And I've requested that Mike spend this money as quickly as possible. Because if you don't spend your prior year money, you won't receive a large amount next year. So your next year's money is based on how much you've spent in prior years. So Mike is doing exactly what I've asked him to in terms of the financial direction for that fund. Fund 35 is our disaster recovery fund, or also known as CARES Act funding. In prior year, we received $1 million, yet the expenditures are happening now. So what you're seeing here in terms of expense is we did spend $100,000 with Tarrant County. I think you approved that last council meeting. And then there was $35,000 that I found that had been booked to the general fund that I reversed out of the general fund and put it against the CARES Act again for 3rd Street. And so what you're seeing here is the water sewer repairs on 3rd Street being charged against the CARES Act funding for the money that was received in prior year. Then on Fund 41, that's basically an other donation fund. And what's happening there is there was some money received for the Diamond Jubilee. And so that's shown as income. And then the expense was a little bit more than what was received in donations. And council had approved $10,000 to come out of the city funds. So at this point, I need to close out that Diamond Jubilee, and I need to either move money from the general fund to Fund 41, or what I probably will do is move expenditures from 41 to the general fund where council approved the extra 10,000 in expense.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, we will have the visitors and citizen forum. Anyone wishing to address the city council regardless to any item on the agenda may do so as the item is considered, provided that a speaker request form has been filled out and submitted to the city secretary before the work session begins. Speakers are allotted 3 minutes and must limit their comments to the subject indicated on the submitted form and should address the council as a whole rather than individual council members or staff. The request to speak. First person would be Ms. Lewis, I believe. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And if you'll come up to the podium and give us your name and address and your telephone number. It's on Magnolia Hills. That's what you're speaking on.
Yes. Hi, I'm Krista Lewis. My address is 1312 Tucker Lane.
Ma'am,
Hi.
hang on just
Oh,
1 second. We've
sorry.
got some mixed here. I'm sorry. Okay, we'll see how many more we got. Land development. Got land development. Land development. Land development. And then this is. Okay, ma'am, if you will, bear with me.
Okay.
We're gonna bring you in on as a first speaker on the Magnolia Hills.
Okay.
And so please accept my apology.
No worries, not at all. Thanks.
Okay, the person that was asked to speak, Linda Miller of 1858 at sbcglobal.net. And is that Magnolia also? Okay, it's not designated, it's just visitor forum. Okay. So she's designated as a visitor. She says, I am for the homes being built on Bob and Ford and the 18 acres. It's never flooded, and my family has lived here over 70 years. I think everyone has the right to sell their properties if they want to. End of, thank you, Linda. So again, that's Linda Miller's opinion. So again, ma'am, if you'll just come on up now, we'll put you there. Sorry for that. You don't, still not yet? Okay. Oh, okay. Pardon me again. Once we shift this thing around enough times, you get to see the real me. Little humor there, not much. Okay. Did this one. Okay, now we're going into public hearing. First item on the public hearing is case PZ 22-10 to conduct a public hearing, receive comments and consider action on a request for zoning and change from AG agriculture to PD, planned development for approximately 18.2 acres, being part of tract 11 of the Oliver Acres addition, part of the lot 6 and 7 in the JM Estes home tracts located at 1106 Kennedale Sublet Road, City of Kennedale, Tarrant County, Texas. Okay. Now, okay, we got Chance up there, so Chances. Oh. Okay, it is about 8:21. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
okay, Chance.
As you can see, the 18.2 acre tract is currently undeveloped, located south of Kennedale Sublet Road, directly west of the Magnolia Hills subdivision. As you can see here is predominantly the adjacent existing zoning is AG with PD plan development to the east, which is Magnolia Hills. There's also a residentially zoned R3 lot to the south and a plan development again for the vineyards. The existing land uses adjacent to the property as well is just consist of single family housing and large lot agricultural. Consistency with the comprehensive plan. You can see here the 2012 comprehensive plan has this area designated as neighborhoods on the future land use map. Therefore, single family residential would be compatible and consistent with the comprehensive plan. Also, the proposed development also aligns with the goals in the comprehensive plan. Principle 2, promote access to housing, and also provides housing options for people of different financial means and residential preferences. It also meets the city council end statements and goals. A well-planned community based on principles of connected city and a thriving community. This is the current site plan. Per this current site plan, there's a proposed development of 72 residential houses with portions of the development being dedicated to open space. The current plan indicates that all the proposed residential lots will exceed the minimum zoning spatial requirements for R4 residential. And since the applicant's request for a zoning change to a PD plan development with the base zoning of an R4 single family residential is compatible with the existing land uses and consistent with the current comprehensive plan, staff has recommended approval. Also want to note that on Planning and Zoning Commission, they recommended approval 4-1. Any questions?
Jan, do you have any questions? Gary, what about you?
Chance, did you say all of them exceed the R4 zoning?
Yes, sir. The minimum R4 zoning residential lot spatial is 50 by 100. Their minimum lot size is 50 by 125.
So they're still 50 foot wide, but they
Yes, sir.
go 25 more foot deep.
Yes.
Okay. It looks like there's 41 houses that are 50 foot wide, 23 that are 60. 4 that are 70, and then you got only 4 that are what we would call R3.
And the R3
Correct.
acts as that transitional zone between the vineyards, which are typically R3 kind of spatial requirements. So that's the R3. That's one of the placement of the R3.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Ken?
Chance, what are we looking at from a traffic impact to Kennedale sublet and call that?
The applicants here, he has a little bit more of that in his application. I think he'll answer that question for you. A little bit more detail than I can.
Thank you.
No questions at this time.
There's no further questions. Chance, we certainly do thank you for your input.
Thank you, sir.
And what's your recommendation on this one, by the way?
Recommended approval.
You recommend
sir.
approval? Okay. B, is the applicant present and would like time to present at this time? John?
Good evening, Mayor Matthews and council members. My name is John Arnold. I'm with Scoreboard Company, 8214 Westchester Street, Dallas, Texas, Suite 900. Thank y'all for having me here tonight. Let me give you a quick presentation. I'll go over a couple things here. We're going to go over a little bit of our company background. Last time I spoke to y'all was, some of you was, I think 2018. So Scoreboard Company, our background, some similar projects in the area, the property location, which Chance has already gone over, our proposed zoning, and a little bit different of a slide, our screening plans, and then we'll talk about our P and Z meeting and some issues that came up. We had 2 meetings for P and Z. We had a lot of discussion during those meetings that could probably help answer most of the questions that we might have tonight. All right, so to start with, we are Scoreboard Company. We're a local privately owned development firm with over 35 years experience. By local, I mean DFW. We've done over 100 projects in more than 25 different cities around DFW. We have over 20 current projects in active development, one of them here in Kennedale, Magnolia Hills Phase 1. We're finishing up our last couple houses in that very successful community. We have a reputation for building high quality, long lasting communities. And our projects range from small infill locations, 5-acre townhome sites, up to 400 to 800 acre master plan communities. Some of those are Rockwall, Anna, down in Midlothian. So we've got all the way from 5 acres up to 400 acres. Projects in the area, Magnolia Hills. It was 23 acres. We had 92 lots in that subdivision. Compared to the 72 in this subdivision, very similar density, approximately the same densities you'll see in our proposal. Windsor Homes and Impression Homes were our builders in that. Windsor Homes is our sister company, our building company. They will be in this subdivision. Impression Homes likely will be in there, or another partner with Windsor Homes, but it'll be a very like builder with Windsor Homes. Our prices have started from the low 400s to low 600s. We're hoping for that same price range, probably a little higher in this next phase, as costs, we all know, have risen a little bit since we started those homes last time. Mitchell Farms, it's about 8-9 minutes away from us over in Mansfield. Both these subdivisions this one started construction right as Magnolia Hills ended. We've delivered those lots and it's under construction. It's about 112 lots. There's mixture of 50s, 60s, and 75s, much like this subdivision, but they're a little shallower. shorter lots. Megadol Homes and Guillen Homes are builders in theirs, and those are ranging from the mid 400s to mid 600s. The same. I'm just showing you all these. Hopefully, should I zoom out a little bit so everybody can see the whole slide? Or is there a way to? Oh, that works. Everybody see it better now? Showing the just so y'all can see some of the very similar size subdivisions we've done, entry features, homes in them. Cypress Crossing is another project in Mansfield. It's about 15.5 acres, 59 lots. Windsor Homes, our building company, and Paul Taylor were in that one. Some examples of our many entry features in some of our communities. These are taken recent. These are recent pictures taken of past subdivisions. So Stone Creek Estates in Rockwall delivered in 2009. Thompson Springs and Fairviews #2 was delivered in 2006. Cumberland Crossing, it was in Allen. We had phases from 2006 to 2012. Breezy Hill Estates and Rockwall from 2009 to current. Silver Creek Meadows down in DeSoto, and Colby Crossing. I just wanted to kind of give you all an example of some of our entry features we've done, and some updated pictures today show that we're still here. We're still taking care of these communities. Colby Crossing in Mansfield is another subdivision that we finished in 2012. These are pictures. That one was our grand opening of our model, but current pictures of some of the housings from this year and the last 2 years, and our entry feature from recent. Stone Creek and Rockwall, our large subdivision that we've in Rockwall, one of our master plans there, that's about 400 acres. And then that was just to kind of show y'all the wider range of the projects we've done. I know y'all have seen Magnolia Hills, but it's not our only one. Just want to kind of show y'all some projects from around DFW that we've done. Subject property is Chance already went over. We're just south of Sublet Road to the west of our existing Magnolia Hills Phase 1. I want to kind of go over dig down a little deeper into our neighbors in this project. So the neighboring properties that we've been working with on this, I'll go kind of through this. Our west property border is on Paul Carticello. It's about 250 foot border with 2 residents of the vineyards. So to the south, east is with our current Magnolia Hills and Miss Ford's property. North are our 2 property owners, the Browns and the Mr. McClellan, and south is Miss Marquez. I wanted to show you all this is because the property 1 and 2 to the north of us are partial landowners that we're buying this property from. 3 is Miss Ford, who she borders us on the south. And then we have our property, Magnolia Hills. B is Miss Marquez. You'll see in a later slide. Miss Marquez has been working with us on connection into the vineyards. This was when we started talking with staff on this in February, March, and April. That was a big point to let's make sure that we made this connection for traffic and for what was planned there. There's always been a future planned connection coming out of the vineyards. It's goes onto Miss Ford's and Miss Marquez's property, but the issue there is that the road splits 2 property lines. We needed right away from Miss Marquez. So Miss Marquez has been kind to us and allowed us to purchase a piece of her property so we can make that connection. Mr. Carticello, I'll go a little more detail into that on the next slide. We've been working with him on an agreement for some concerns he had. We went over this in P&Z in a pretty deep detail, but Mr. Carticello had some concerns with our original plan, homes being too close to his property and a couple of the homes just proximity. So we're working on an agreement with him. If we can come to that agreement, we will leave this open space up here for him, an open space here. In exchange, we're going to work with him to actually bring some drainage through and rework his pond on A. So we're working with that neighbor. And then Miss Miller on the next pond, we started working with her when we looked at the drainage for Mr. Carticello and realized that Miss Miller's pond had actually been blocked off. She was not getting flow from the original flow she used to get and the flow from the subdivision to the south. So we're working with her and got a drainage easement with her to kind of connect all these ponds back together. So a little more detail on Mr. Carticello's agreement. If you'll look at the original plan I showed him is on your left. You'll see we have 1, 2, 3 lots there, and then 2 lots up where you can see this two street layouts are different, the side-by-side images is concerned where these two lots there. So we're looking to leaving open that space and giving him the building, and then we'll leave those two lots out. In exchange for that, our original plan had our detention area on our property. Instead, we're going to actually realign our southern border and bring the drainage through and do detention on our property and his property. So it's kind of an exchange, neighborly exchange, working through the design together. I think it benefits both of us. We have a much larger area to work through the drainage issues, and then reconnect Miss Miller's pond, and then also our neighbor gets something he desire. Ms. Marquez, as we talked about before, this connection to the vineyards, as you can see, the vineyards, this black line like right here is the property line between Ms. Ford and Ms. Marquez. You can't bring this road through without both properties either being developed or one property giving up right away. Ms. Marquez has agreed to sell us this portion so that we can bring most of the right of way up onto our property and build a connection into vineyards and Magnolia Hills Phase 2. So we have an additional point of access and avoiding any traffic concerns. Our proposed zoning, Chance went over this, but there's something I'd like to kind of put a focus on here. We're about 18.5 acres. Phase 1 was 23 acres. We have 72 single family lots. Phase 1 was 92. Our typical lot size is 6,000 to 10,000 square foot. And as Mr. Mitchell pointed out, we've got 41 50-foot lots, 23 60-foot by 125, 4 70s and 4 80s. If you look at the box there, Phase 1 and Phase 2 comparison, this is basically the same mix. So 50s, on Phase 1, we had just 50s and 60s. And we had 56% 60s and 44% 56% 50s and 44% 60s. This phase, we got 56% 50s again, and then 44% 60 plus. We actually added in some larger lots into this phase, as Chance mentioned, trying to transition the R3 into vineyards to match vineyards. So basically, this is the same zoning, same lot mix as Magnolia Hills 1, which was a very successful community for us. And I hope the city feels the same way, that it's really been received well. Our typical house sizes range from 1,800 square foot to 3,000 plus. We're going to have the same architectural standards that council had us put in council and staff had us put in their original Magnolia Hills. So that'll mirror that PD. We had an 80% masonry requirement. We had most of these next couple are anti-monotony clauses that we put in on the original PD that we worked with council on. The front building elevations shall not repeat along any block face without at least 4 intervening homes of different materials on the same side of the street and 2 intervening homes of different materials. Exterior facades for houses will vary within every 6 homes. Once a house is constructed, no brick, masonry like materials of paint may be used within 4 houses on either side. Facades must be broken up by changes in plane, thought, architectural attenuation, accents, effects of window placement, window trim, material type, or color change. And we will have the HOA maintenance of all common areas and open space and landscaping and drainage areas. As Connor pointed out previously, a little more eloquently, the current zoning that we put forward, the R3, is compatible with the 2012 comprehensive plan and the same and our neighboring community, Magnolia Hills Phase 1. We did have a conversation with Kennedale ISD superintendent prior to P&Z, and he confirmed that the district will be able to serve the future residences in our current phase that's constructed and this phase of 72 lots. He said that the school does not have any concerns with the number of students coming from our 72 lots. Current screening plan. As you can see along this it's turned sideways here. This is north, this is south. It kind of didn't fit with our examples, but these are examples of the fencing that we put in and the tubular steel. So we're going to have a 6-foot board on our north boundary, and then use the same 6-foot board on board fence will back up to the current residence on phase 1. Here where the pond is, we're gonna have tubular steel along the back of these lots, back facing up to the pond, and then along Miss Ford's property, Miss Marquez's property, and the vineyards where the wall is, we'll do an 8-foot board on board as we've been requested by Miss Marquez, Miss Ford, and the vineyards. We'll have an open, where our open space is, we'll have a tubular steel fence for the flow through the 2 drainage areas. And then Mr. Carticello has also asked for an 8-foot board on board fence that we will continue around this property. Also, as a request of Mr. Carticello and staff, we're putting trees along the frontage of these homes. So basically each 50-foot lot will have its own tree across the street in a 20-foot wide landscaping area. So it'll be a nice buffer. P and Z focus and approval. During our first P and Z meeting, we had a citizen come up and ask some questions about the ponds and ask if these were jurisdictional waters. There was a claim of possibly an aqueduct. We were already in the process of getting a Waters of the U.S. jurisdictional determination on this property. So during that, we went back to P and Z last time with our findings, and basically I'll just kind of go through those. We have our pond ST2, which is Mr. Carticello's property, and the Brown property, ST1, which is on the Brown's property, ST3, which is on Mr. McClellan's property, and ST4, which is on Miss Ford's property. All 3 landowners have confirmed that these ponds are man-made ponds. They're not natural ponds. They were built as stock tanks at one point to service cattle on each property. We engaged Peter McCone with Weaver Consulting. He's here with us tonight. If there's any questions, he answered a couple questions at P&Z, and eased their mind on some concerns we had there. Mr. McCone's a certified wildlife biologist. He's been consulting in this field for 33 years. He's taught wetlands and stream classes at TCU since 2006 and worked on North Central Texas interagency stream team at the request of the EPA, and conducting stream restoration workshops throughout Texas and Arkansas. So he has a long history in Texas in jurisdictional waters, wetlands, and environmental concerns that might. So he has provided a report. I provided it to staff. He's provided that report that based on his observations and his an aerial historical aerial photos and the connection of these ponds actually being stock tanks and the connections between them being man-made, that these are not jurisdictional waters. And then furthermore, the proposed development will not result in the destruction or adverse modification of any federally designated critical habitat or any threatened endangered species. So basically, when he does this report, he also looks for endangered species in the area. So he goes out, takes photos, walks the site. He's looked at Ms. Ford's property, Mr. McClellan's property, the Brown property. He also got permission from Mr. Carticello to observe his property, and he got permission from Ms. Miller yesterday to go observe her property. So he's observed all 5 properties in the area to make sure that we don't have an environmental issue or any kind of jurisdictional water or wetlands on this property, which is positive news for the development. The concern that there's groundwater, this area is kind of a low point. You can see that from Ms. Ford's property down, the water flows down to her pond. From Magnolia Hills, the water flows down to Mr. McClellan's pond. That was actually, we're sitting in this council room in 2018, and Mr. McClellan was one of the citizens that came up and talked to me and about making sure that he had his water, and we took care of his pond. And we've worked together for the last 4 years, and now he's decided to sell his property to us. So we've kept a good relationship through those 4 years. And then a lot of the water from our site and Ms. Brown's comes down to Mr. Brown's pond, and then on into Mr. Carticello's pond and to Ms. Miller's pond. What we did during that, because of those questions, we have not done our full geotech report, but we went and took borings around this, around each pond. So all your red dots are borings around each pond. You can see on Ms. Ford's property, we took some borings coming down this stream to check and see if there's any groundwater up here or flowage of water. We didn't find any water in these higher elevation bores, but around the pond, we did observe water. but we had two geotechs look at the bores, two separate geotechs look at the bores. We had another expert that was supposed to come tonight, but he's had some COVID issues and then. But we had two letters in writing, so it's not verbal, from two separate engineering groups that basically this is typical groundwater. You have two stock ponds, you're gonna have seepage out of those stock ponds. So we bored down, we found water at 9 foot, 13.5 foot. But it didn't gush out. It wasn't an aquifer where something, water gushed out like a oil well or something. So this is just typical groundwater, and both engineers separately had the same outcome, that all of these ponds properly backfilled, properly demucked, backfilled. So we drained them, we cut them down 4 to 5 feet, and they're out there through the geotechs are out there through the process, compacting the soil. That with proper compaction, that they would be testing, that all these ponds can easily be mitigated, and we can build normal foundation on them, a more normal shallow foundation, not some massively piered foundation. So we will finish a full geotech report, but that takes a month or two. But we've done our work in these two areas to make sure that we're safe to build houses here. One thing to think about is Magnolia Hills Phase 1, ponds on it. We've done the process. Vineyards next door to us had multiple ponds on this. If you about 3 houses south of here, there was a large pond there. Same process. This is a very common process to have seepage around ponds where the water comes out of the pond. So you're going to have a groundwater level. Water finds a place to, water goes underground and finds a place to go. You're going to find water. You drill a hole in it, the water is going to stop in that hole. So the depth of the water is not a concern on this property. So we went did a due diligence on both the wetlands and the groundwater analysis. Traffic, what we learned between our P&Z and our first P&Z and our second P&Z is that Arlington is currently in the process of improving Kennedale Sublet Road. And then also the very first thing that came up when this project was making sure we had that connection through the vineyards so that we can have access. This is just kind of an image of where the access points for this projects are. We've got a couple of our neighbors who actually live here. Ms. Ford can speak to the traffic here. I think she will. But currently, I think we are adding 72 houses, but we are adding another connection point. And with Sublet Road being improved, I don't think the consideration of 72 houses is, if needed, we'll work with staff to do a traffic study to see if there's any improvements on any roads around us. But at this point, we're at a zoning stage, and definitely when we get into engineering, if there's a concern with traffic, road improvements, stuff like that, we would do a traffic study with for staff to review. Southern Street right away, we've kind of already talked about this as far as the connection. And then drainage solutions. We've talked a little bit about drainage prior to this, but our plan right now, at our second meeting, we had one of our citizens come up and ask us mainly about this area right here along the vineyards. There's been some flooding. I'll show you the next pictures. These two photos are really just our before and after. If we're planning on originally having on the right side of the screen was our original plan for drainage. We put our ponds on our site, much like we did on Magnolia Hills, and then drain into Mr. Carticella's pond. With agreement with Mr. Carticella, we're actually going to bring the drainage through and extend his pond to the north for more volume, for more drainage volume, and then reconnect Miss Miller's pond to his, because right now she's drying out and kind of getting whatever dribble of water she can off these back property lines. There's actually kind of, she dug a little trench. It looks like you do at the beach to try to get one pond to the other on the beach. She's trying to get some water. So we'll make these connections back for her so she can get some water for her horses and her animals. These were these pictures to your right were pictures that were actually brought to us during P&Z by a citizen. He handed me some printed out pictures. We had actually already been back on this property prior to this. We'd walked along the back of the vineyards here, all the way down to Miss Miller's property to see what was going on, why she wasn't getting water. And then we actually had walked along here. Currently, there's a retaining wall built right here where the water was originally supposed to come into the subdivision and go down. We will be making an improvement here. This water, this this picture you're taking right here, is taken right here is this area. The water's not able to come down the hill, get here and make the corner because there's not a big enough easement to come around this corner. So it just kind of piles in this area. What we'll be doing is, one, we'll be capturing water to bring it back in through the vineyards, then also likely have a pipe here with an inlet to pick up water just north of this and bring it down and put it into either our pond or the pond that we're building on Mr. Carcella's property. So this issue that the citizen actually brought up in P and Z, we'd actually already talked to staff about it. Daryl brought it up to me, Max brought it up to me. I think I have one. And so we'd actually already looked at this. So thankfully we looked at that. I met with the landowner after, took his pictures. And I figured out we need to put this in the presentation, tell you what we've done to talk to this neighbor. Some representative product. I think you've driven down Magnolia Hills, you'll see our product. These are Windsor Homes products that some interiors of those homes. And then as we talked about, our price ranges for these homes, what we're expecting. And then I'll end with this, and I'm here for any questions.
Jen, do you have any questions? Okay.
Yeah, because I got a large presentation of my own.
Okay.
So in relation to that area, have you done a topographic study by any chance?
We've taken topo.
You have.
We have taken topo enough for, not the typical topo, because right now we're at zoning. So typically during zoning, we don't take much topo. We do a plan, we talk to staff. If there's concerns, we will. This project itself, though, we've basically topoed from about 130 to 40 foot north of Mr. Carcella's property, taken in Mr. Brown's property, and taken in the pond on Mr. McClellan's down to the south. So we've kind of topoed this bottom part of it to see where the drainage flow is going. We've actually done a preliminary drainage study, which typically we don't do at this area. We do it at plating, but we've kind of already done that and gone over that with staff.
So I did a little research of my own, and my research came from UNT, the U.S. Geological Service, the EPA, Half and Associates, and the Trinity River Authority.
Yes, sir.
All of them.
Yes, sir.
And the information that I have found is that your study is actually incomplete and wrong. I would call it misinformation. There's a reason why all that land over there is considered ag. The reason why is because during heavy rainstorms, it does flood over there, regardless of what anyone does say.
Okay.
And I actually have the records in this binder right here.
Yes, sir.
It has flooded a record 22 to 25 times over there. I can give you the exact years if you'd like. Also, with a topographic study, this was done in 1956. It's a topographic study that was done for the entirety of Kennedale at that time. And it does show that the topography for that area is not conducive to development. And I did go ahead and blow it up for you so that people can actually see it if you want it. If you look, well, a lot of people aren't going to be able to see this, but on my little sheet right here, you see where Village Creek is actually coming out of Lake Arlington, and the topography on it comes all the way down into this area, and it actually stops right here where you're proposing to build. So those ponds, they are not man-made. They are actually a natural feature. And this is according to the information that I have received from UNT and that I have also received from the U.S. Geological Survey. So, and to go even further back, this is the original deed to that land. It was done by J.M. Lilly. This was also given to me by UNT, which is foundable online. This is from June 20th, 1863. That was during World War times. The surveyor was Tarrant County, and they hereby certified that the certificate of commission and general land office that the purchase money has been received fully for the land on the waters of Village Creek. So there is water that runs through there. And to go even further, this is a blown up picture of it, of the Knee Branch and Village Creek tributaries that run through that area. This is from 1919, which means those ponds are over a century old. Knee Branch or Key Branch. I call it Knee. I know there's no N in there, but yeah, Key, I guess you would say. Through Steeplechase, yes. Through Coker Valley, through Steeplechase, through all that. According to this information from 1919, it runs even further down towards the railroad.
Just state something.
And-
I'll make a couple points real quick. I just kind of go through.
Go ahead.
This property is an ag, because it has not been zoned. This is an ag property because at some point people, still now, most of our owners have had cows on it. And so that's why it's ag. It's ag because nobody's zoned it or developed it. It's been used for ag. And that, as we talked about, it's ag. These were stock ponds made by the landowners and previous landowners. They can get up and speak to you on that and just here in a second. Topo, most of those maps are topo maps that we pull as well. I believe Pete's probably pulled some of those as well. Those are topo maps taken by aerials, flyovers over years.
Yes.
From the air, we actually got on the ground. This property flows not from the lake down. We're flowing that way. We're flowing northeast. So we're at the start of it. These ponds are picking up some drainage off of Magnolia 1. This property right here is the last property that drains this way. All this goes this way. This road here is our breaking point for a lot of this. This comes in here. Mr. McClellan, Mr. Brown, Mr. Carcello's property drains down here. So we've done our research on what does drain to this area into these ponds, and these ponds are picking up the immediate area. They're picking up south of Kennedale Sublet, east of, I forgot the name of this, or sorry, west of, I forgot the name of this subdivision, and then this area down here. So we're actually picking up where that is. Flooding, I've been told by many people here tonight and people that have lived on this property for a while, the flooding really didn't start back there until vineyard started. And then after the vineyard started, when the home builder built its home and put a retaining wall and took the retaining wall a little too far up and blocked it from the road. So that's actually what's caused this. We've talked to Max about it. We talked to staff about it, and we plan to try to help fix it. And that was this slide here.
So that would be Murray Hill, the one that you just actually passed by.
This one?
Yeah. And I actually have a study for
Where's-
that as well.
Okay.
So the area that you're talking about right there.
I don't know. I can't see that.
Okay.
I did ask, you and I had a
ahead.
very good conversation about this. And I
We
asked-
did. We had
I asked for a lot of your study
conversation over the phone.
materials. And the study materials that I did receive, we reviewed. My consultant reviewed as well. That was more of a watershed environmental. How do you handle the water coming through here? So I am happy.
Did you?
I'm happy to meet with you. We're for the zoning case.
Yes.
I think we're talking about land use, but I am very happy to meet.
Oh,
with you.
zoning does have to go with land use as well.
Yes, sir. This is land use. Yes, sir.
Yes,
So,
zoning has to,
but
has to go.
I
with
am
the
more
land
than
use.
happy to meet with you, get all the information you have, meet with my engineers.
Mr. Arnold, I was not done speaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. Apologize.
So I did reach out to a representative from the Trinity River Authority, who is a 50-year veteran from that area. And this is what he had to say. He could not be here tonight because as a Trinity River Authority personnel, it would be out of his jurisdiction. Or should I say it would cause an ethical issue. So I did go ahead and contact him about any type of flooding or any type of runoff or any type of issues that may arise from homes being built in a watershed, because it is part of a watershed. It's part of the Lake Arlington Master Plan watershed, and it's also part of the Trinity River watershed as well. So he did state, and I quote, "I think your instincts are good here because the developer does want to build what is obviously a natural water course. Because of these ponds are situated, I doubt that they're being fed by groundwater. You can rule it out with a geotechnical survey, which you said that you have done or are in the process of doing, but yet we don't have that here to look at. But," he says, "there aren't many springs in that area, and the ponds are out of the Village Creek floodplain, which they are. So it's not likely that there's alluvial connectivity." He did say that he does see the natural changes in surface elevations of the pond, but would certainly expect this from surface runoff. He goes on to state that he can't recall hearing about any type of sinkholes, which was a concern that I did speak with you about. He said, of course, if the developer does not account for runoff entering the property, water that would have otherwise flowed into those ponds, he could cause flooding in the development, and filling what was a water feature obviously must be done correctly to avoid settling problems later on. He did state also that his concern would be the ability of the creek downstream to convey the additional flow. He states that these ponds absolutely serve to impound and retard flows through without a proper hydraulic model, which to my understanding you have not done. He says he can't know to what extent. So in effect, the city of Kennedale is getting hit twice, once with the addition of impervious space, and then with the loss of storage and retention provided by the ponds that will be removed and filled. But then again, he says you would need a hydraulic model to understand the actual impact. It may or may not be significant. He did state that, interestingly, that the development to the east appears to be taking advantage of the first pond, and he wonders if it was required to mitigate downstream. And to go forward, just a little bit on that, and to kind of give out a little bit more information, this is P&Z case 13-04 from August 15, 2013, when at that time Alluvium Development Incorporated wanted to come in and put in a development, also known as the Vineyards. It states here that in addition to meeting with staff, the developer also held a meeting with owners and property near the site to get a better understanding of what their concerns might be. Drainage and traffic safety on Mansfield Cardinal Road were two of the major concerns voiced during that meeting. He stated that he had been working with an engineering firm to address the drainage issue, and in 2007, the city did conduct a study of the tributary of Village Creek that runs through that property. And the engineer had reviewed that study and incorporated it into the draining and grading plans. Bullet point number 5 in that would have been to add 5 retaining or detention ponds to serve as community amenities, which that is exactly what they did, because they also, like your property, when you were doing phase 1, encountered a ton of water that was under the ground. And I have photos to prove that. Without box culverts that you had done in the front there in your drainage pond that was up here, that was full of water. Yeah. And that wasn't from rainwater. I'm sorry to tell you that, but there's no way that was there for all that rainwater.
Okay.
None. Also, when you were doing grading, there were pockets where you were putting your homes. There were pockets of water that were along the sides, and there was no water trucks in the satellite photos that I looked at. Also, in the main streets, there was water there. And again, there was nothing there on that one either. So with that being said, I had one more thing to present to you. This was your original model for Magnolia Hills Phase 1. In the back, there is no detention pond that is shown. There's one back there now, and it's because you ran into water. You also have a connection going from that area into that first pond that's right on the other side for drainage. So you already have a flooding issue over there because your houses in the circle at the very back of the property, they sit up on an elevation. And that is noticeable when you actually go over there and look because they're stair stepped as they come down. And there is only 2 manholes right there or drainage ditches that the water flows into. When you go around the corner, there's another one. So all that water that does come down from there actually connects to that, that I guess you would say culvert that runs into the back pond. Also, Colette Sublet sit in the very back, actually sits on a hill as well. So all that water does run down, and you can tell because under the ground, right next to all those houses that go along the side, there are culverts as well, similar to what Eric Elam has over the next under his property where his driveway is. So there were 2 box culverts that were actually installed right there to contain the flowing of water into your property down there as well. So when you tell me that there's no flooding problem in your area or in that property, I can't help but notice all these flood mitigation things that you put in to mitigate any type of flooding. So my question to you would be, how could you be so sure that it's not going to flood? And how are you sure that it doesn't flood? I understand that you hit water 9 foot down and 13 foot down, but I'm going to tell you this right now. We are in one of the driest seasons. This area has received less than I think 17.8 inches of rain for the entire year. And I can also tell you this, just basic knowledge tells me this. If those ponds were man-made, they would be dried out by now. So they're not. They actually still have water in them. So that tells me right there that they're not. And also going into the Village Creek study, which was done in 2007 and produced in 2012 by Half and Associates, it does state on page 5. And I'm trying not to take up any time or a lot of time, so I apologize if I do. It does state that the city of Kennedale is a rapidly developing community concerned about the increased threat of flooding associated with damages due to urbanization, specifically along the main stem of Village Creek. It also goes in to show a lot of a couple of satellite photos. And in 1970, the Army Corps of Engineers did do a floodplain information study on that area. I wasn't able to get my hands on that, unfortunately, or else I would have it here with me as well. But I can tell you this, the most recent major flooding was as recent, again, this was done in 2012, but the most recent flooding was in June when we got literally 6.5 inches of rain in 4 hours, which is ungodly heard of. And it flooded. It flooded a lot of
I
areas.
think that's those pictures.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's exactly what those pictures are.
Yes,
So I'm sorry to say this, Mr. Arnold, and please don't take this the wrong way. For you to sit there and tell me that it doesn't flood, it does.
Okay.
For the residents to tell me that it doesn't flood, those pictures prove that it does. Also, you've had major flooding disasters in 1922, 49, 57, 64, and 69. The Star Telegram and Dallas Morning News also report major floods occurring in 16, 45, 62, 65, 68, 70, and so on. So with all of this information that I have here, that is just overwhelming information for me to sit here and look at, I have to wonder. I understand that your development has built in watersheds over the years. We have talked about that. I understand that you will do anything that is possible to help mitigate the flow or flooding areas. However, until a I can't even say the word right now. Hydrologic study is done, until a geotechnical survey is actually in front of me to where I can read it. And actually I'd have to get some help from an engineer to actually read it because I'm not one. I deal in finance. This is not my thing.
Mhm.
But in a month and a half, I have done so much research. My eyes have opened up, and due to the general health, safety, and general welfare of protecting our waterways and preserving them, I have to deny it.
Okay.
Because all this information, all this proof that I have is overwhelmingly against you, regardless of what studies you have and what you have shown me. I have to go by what the research is telling me. And please don't take this the wrong way. I don't believe anything that someone puts on a piece of paper and sticks it in front of me. I do all of my own research, and this is the reason why. In the past, Kennedale has gotten burned by developments who say they're going to give us great, glorious things, and then we don't get it. So forgive me for being such a, I guess, pessimist, but I'm optimistic about Kennedale's future. But I don't think this is the development for us. Thank you.
I'll do kind of a quick reply to some of that. You had a lot more time to prepare that statement than I. I'm going to try to hit some of the points. There's a lot of points, and there's a lot of points. But I think I can probably talk to most of them. The first one is the last two things you said. The first thing is, I don't think I said it didn't flood. I said that it did not, this area did not flood on Ms. Ford's property in this back area until Vineyards was built and that wall was built. That's where that water's from. It's blocking it. I'm showing you on a picture here, something that we've actually gone out and done. We talked about the topo. You've got maps from aerial topo. We've gone out there, looked at it. We know which way the water's flowing. I've walked it, just like you said, the vineyards. You were praising the vineyards for going out there, walking the site and talking about the drainage problem and fixing it. Same thing I'm telling you right now. I've met with I've met with landowners in the vineyards. I've met with my landowners. I've met with my neighbors, and actually we're given easements from those neighbors to try to help fix their problems. So I'm working on that. I'm doing the same thing you just praised the vineyards for. I'm proposing ponds, so real quick, geotech. You said I didn't have a geotech. I provided I think 10, 11 bores and 2 letters from 2 geotechs that are actually observing that water, observing the ground, the soils, the clays. So I provided, I provided what you're asking for. This is kind of all to the letters said. Letters said they should have a geotech, they should bore, and they should see the subsurface elevations. I've done that. He talks about runoff. Runoff, I've already showed you where the runoff's coming from. We've had that conversation a couple times. We have runoff to the south of us from Ms. Ford's property, from Magnolia, from the north, and it all comes through here. I've shown you 2 proposed things. We talked about conveying the flows. We know where the flows are coming from because I just designed the face to the south. I've talked to Ms. Ford to the south. I know where the water's coming from, and we've already done a preliminary study, talked through some of it with staff. We know what's coming on and off of us, and we have very good hydrologists that have already done preliminary estimates on that. Will we go out and do a full set of engineering plans once I grade this thing out, put the grading in, put the water, sewer, storm, paving, everything? Yeah, we'll do a final study, but we've done more on this job than I think we've done on any zoning case I've done, and had a hydrologist look at this further than any job we've done. You talked about the hydraulic model. I'd be happy to share it with your friend at Train River Valley Authority. My mother actually worked there and was on the board for about 10 years. So I know there's some same people, and bet we could go meet some people. The pond in phase 1, you said on the north that there's groundwater in there. I think probably Max could back me up on this. The reason that held water is because we could not, until our subdivision was done, allow that water to go into the system on Kennedale Sublet. We actually had a plug there. So that was rainwater built up over months and months. We drained it about 3 or 4 times. And actually, when we were trying to finish that project, it kept raining. Took me about 4 months to get sod in that thing, because every time I'd grade it out and try to put sod in it, it would rain.
And it's already grown over. It needs to be cut down, but
And we will have somebody address that. But that was plugged out. There's not a groundwater problem on phase 1.
on the satellite photo, I'm sorry, Mr. Arnold, I do have to interrupt you, but on the
Yes.
satellite photo that I looked at, that was from November
Mhm.
of 2019. It was full, and there wasn't no plug there. There wasn't even any kind of a build out there
Okay.
for a culvert.
There was a plug at the where we can make the connection with our outfall structure. We didn't want to.
It might have been underground under the water that I couldn't see.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It was. I constructed the job. I've been with our company for 10 years. I was a contractor on
I'm not
site.
denying that.
So that's why the water was in there. The pond on the south, the change in our plan. Yeah, we looked at having a centralized pond in the middle of the project. That was our original plan. It didn't work. We actually finished our studies. We had our models and we moved the location of that pond and redesigned our property and actually worked with our neighbor here on that outfall structure where the pond would be, how much water was coming on us, off us and into his pond to make sure he could have water. We also talked about the flooding issue. I think we started with that. I didn't say there wasn't a flooding issue. I said, I'm here to fix it and help fix it. And the flooding issue was basically caused by the development, putting a wall in the incorrect place. I think your staff can back that up. Talked about the, and a lot of the times you see during the summer, a pond at the bottom of a hill in the bottom of a subdivision on another property next door, it is groundwater. Groundwater can travel even when you don't have rain for a while. People water their yards all day long. So those ponds, we will continue drilling and I will do more drilling out there and I will dig those ponds down. And I will make sure that they're safe and I will make sure that they're tested and the geotechs that I hire will be there. So currently, I think I've kind of addressed most of.
You've addressed enough, but at the same time, it still doesn't change my decision.
Okay, I'm just want to make sure that I'm clear that the things you pointed out to me on the phone and today, that there are things that we are concerned about or have looked at or have dug into and done a lot of research on our own. We've done on the ground research. And I can even have my, we talked about the watershed. I can have my expert come up here and talk to you about what he observed on site, if anybody would like that as well.
Also, you want to rezone a property that you have done no traffic study to. That's a little concerning as well.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think the people in the vineyards are going to like the increased traffic to get out. And I don't think I can't speak for the people on Colette Sublet because, you know,
I'll let I'll let Miss Ford, some of the people that live on.
Miss Ford has already emailed me. I've told her my decision as well.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. I can't. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you did not touch the natural water features over there.
Can I have him, my expert, he can come up and tell you.
I heard your expert at the
Okay.
P&Z meeting.
Okay, good.
I mean, if he still wants to come up and talk, he can.
Okay.
Again, it's still not going to change my mind.
Okay.
But like
I
I said,
understand. I respect your opinion. Yes, sir.
the overwhelming amount of flooding in the city and in that area, according to this study, and according to the information that I have, and according to all of the stream information that I have from, you know, the early 20th century to now, it still tells me that this is not a great place to build in. And it even says on page 1, it says right in here, this is not because it is rapidly growing and because of the urbanization that we are concerned of flooding. We are concerned that if we get one of those storms in here, because we can get them. I mean, in 2010, Hurricane Hermione came here. It dropped 27 inches of rain on the watershed. 27. That's a lot. It flooded areas of 287. It flooded Mansfield Cardinal. It flooded Dick Price Road. It flooded basically the entire downtown corridor. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your study, but I still have to stick with my decision.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for your research.
All right. Following up on that, first, I'd like to thank you for the in-depth presentation that you gave us and the amount of due diligence that you've put forth towards this development. I do agree with Councilman Connor that having a traffic study would be nice so that we can have a better understanding of the impact to our neighbors and the current roadway infrastructure that we do have. But with regards specifically to Councilman Connor's concern on drainage, watershed, and water runoff, given the amount of due diligence that you've done thus far and what is still remaining with the geotechnical report, hydrology study, would the retention ponds and flood mitigation preparations that you would intend to have in place be sufficient to mitigate any of these, any of the flooding concerns? I understand that by the vineyards, the flooding that is occurring there due to the retaining wall would be mitigated. So you're taking steps in that direction, but just from an overall point of view, is the design of your retention ponds going to be adequate to alleviate the remainder of the flood?
Yes, it will be. We'll design to the 100-year storm, and then also I believe, what is it, 1-2 foot of freeboard over that? We will design to the city standards, and it will handle these floods.
That's all I have at the moment. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
And then a point to the traffic study, typically, project of this size, does not warrant a traffic study at zoning. If staff finds concerns or requests one, we typically do those. But a 72 lot subdivision, there's traffic thresholds that, they're typically warrant a traffic study, and 72 lots typically does not. But at plating, if staff would like one, if you would like me to come back with a traffic study, with counts, we can do that.
I think for me on the traffic study thing, it isn't necessarily the 72 lots standalone by themselves, but when you combine that with the 90 some odd lots that were
Mhm.
placed in phase one, that gives you approximately
Yeah.
150 lots total. 2 cars per house, 300 cars, 2 trips per day, 600 trips down the road.
Yeah.
That's where the culmination of both is where I see the value in it.
Okay. And I can bring that to you at plating. And I think the improvements that we're making to connection to vineyards and the improvements y'all are making to Kennedale Sublet will more than alleviate our issues and show in traffic study that they'll be alleviated.
Very good.
And the timing wise, from what I understand, these will be delivered close to the same time.
That's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
That's all I have for the moment. Thank you, sir.
Ken, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I got a lot of comments. First of all, James, thanks for your presentation. You did a lot of work on it, but there's some of the creeks that you're looking at, like Key Branch is something that divides. Key Branch actually starts at Eden Road and goes down Sweeney Height and goes into Coker Valley. Windy Creek actually starts at Linda Miller's property. I've lived out there for 45 years. And you're talking about 2010 with the big hurricane and that Mansfield Cardinal flooded. I never saw it flood. I've never saw anything flood in that area in any type of storms. And I've been there for 45 years. 1988 is when we had the major flood that took out the Village Creek Mobile Home Park, which sat down there by the bridge on 287 or Kennedale Parkway. No water came up. And you got to look at it, that water starts right there at Sweeney Height in the S curve behind my property where the floodplain is. I had no water come on my property during that flood in 1988. I had no water come on my property in 1992. I had no water come on my property in 1996. That area doesn't flood because of the fact when you look at the Windy Creek, how it runs, when you get down to Bowman Springs, that is the low-lying area. That's the area that floods. And then it backs up Village Creek all the way to Everman. So what you're saying and what you brought up, and I've looked at the same thing, the 1957 study of the ponds. Okay. You can talk to the property owners and they're going to tell you that they dug the ponds themselves. And then you made a statement that, you know, if it didn't have water running to it, didn't have an aquifer to it, that they would be dry. Have you drove around and looked at all the ponds in Kennedale and see if they're dry? Because a good example would be Steeplechase, the pond right there of Kennedale Sublet. It's not completely dry because it's a runoff of Key Branch. Okay, it's the same thing. The water levels on these ponds have been dropping every day. So it's not the fact that there's an aquifer there or tributary, but I can understand. Yes, there is, it sets in a valley. It does. And a lot of the flooding problems didn't happen till the vineyard came in. And the one picture that he has, that cow you see standing there is Miss Ford's cow. And the reason why is because that road is stubbed out and all the water's running down the curb and pushing into that property. And then it's going around the backside and following the natural flow.
Granted, you've probably been here for 45 years. I've been here for 10,
And
so I don't know those. I'm
so,
going based upon the information that.
well, I was
given.
speaking myself here. I didn't interrupt you, so please don't interrupt me. The point of the matter is you were never for it and you never listened to it. You never listened to his presentation or anything. You've already put it in your mind that you didn't want this development to happen. I don't know why. I mean, I think it's something that I look at the new Magnolia Hills Phase 1. I don't see a problem with it. And I live over there. And by the way, I live more than 200 feet from this construction area. So I have a say. Do I look at the traffic? Yeah, I do look at the traffic. But guess what? That's what we're going to have to deal with, you know. And I also look at is if we deny this, who's to say 10 years from now that an apartment complex wants to come in and build right there and change the zoning? So I'd rather have houses, and I don't know if I will be around in 10 years, but I'd rather have houses down there than have an apartment complex, because we might not be on this council, but the next council might vote something like that in. So that's my main concern. I didn't mean to get rude with you. I'm sorry about that. But I mean, it's just when you talk about Key Branch and Windy Creek and those are two separate tributaries that flow. And I know where the divide is. I used to fish the Key Branch because that runs through Falcon Crest. And it's just one of those deals. And then I've spent many times running out in these fields and I've never seen any flooding. Because if that floods, which is part of Windy Creek before they developed Little School Road would be flooding. So it's one of those deals that you're trying to prove some facts and it's not there. It's not happening. You know, that guy didn't come out and check and say, oh yeah, this area floods. It doesn't. And everybody that's probably going to speak after me or the citizens are going to tell you it's never flooded.
And that might be the case. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I permitted to speak?
Yeah, go. Yeah, if you would like to.
Okay, great. Thank you. That might be the case. I'm going by what the research has told me. I haven't lived here for 45 years. I'm being honest. My grandfather grew up here. He lived here for 50 years. My aunt and my uncle, they live here. They lived here for 50 years. So I am very familiar with Kennedale. I've only lived here for 10. My family has lived here longer. I'm going based upon what the information has told me, and I'm only presenting what it is telling me. I'm not presenting my own set of facts. I'm presenting what I'm reading. And I apologize if that upsets you, but I can only go based upon what the facts are showing me.
What it really doesn't upset me. The thing, what we're looking at, this is just a zoning change. That's all it is. You're wanting the builder to do all this extra stuff to prove to you that it's not going to flood when all it is just a zoning change. I mean, that stuff's going to come up. And if it floods, I'm pretty sure he has second options to figure it out. I mean, you got to give him time to do the study. If he can't do the study, I mean, if I was a builder, I wouldn't want, I mean, he's already drilled for drilling. And normally that doesn't happen till after you change the zoning. So he's already invested in something that we're not going to let go any farther. We're just going to leave it how it is. I don't have nothing else to say. Thank you.
If I may, to the point that you just made, as far as due diligence and where we're at in the process, you're 100% correct. We're talking zoning right now. When we get to the plat portion of this conversation as it moves forward, is the validation point for drainage, the validation point for flooding, and ensuring that the design at that point has taken into consideration all of the variables that have been discussed this evening.
Gary, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I said the same thing on it until I read this page here. Staff report, staff review, and it says, I'm not gonna read all of it, but it talks about the residential would be required in order to accommodate a PD with base zoning of R4 single family residential. So that's what they're looking for. In other words, they're looking to put the R4s in there. So as far as rezoning it to PD, I don't have a problem with that. It needs to be rezoned to something. At some point in time, somebody needs to build something there. But the concern with me, my concern is the traffic. And I'm not a big fan of R4. I'm going to tell you. So we had a P&Z at one time that put this R4 zoning in place, and I just don't think it fits Kennedale very well. And I'm not for it. Daryl and I talked today, and he said that the majority of it was oversized lots. And now I see what he meant. I didn't see it in the beginning, but I do now. They're just deeper, but they're still 50-foot wide. And that's the problem. You know, when you go in Magnolia Hills, they are beautiful homes. And thank you guys. I think I've done an excellent job over there for what you were given and what you presented, and you've done everything you said you were going to do. But you can't even push a lawnmower between the houses for the AC units. It's just small. I mean, maybe that's the way it is with builders now and the way it needs to be done. But me personally, I think adding 71 more houses over there, 72 more houses over there, the traffic is what really concerns me. I mean, even I don't really like the R4 deal, but I could live with that in the right spot. But when you start dumping those houses into residential lots, straight into residential housing development and not onto a major road, I don't know. It just seems odd to me. So in other words, if you were dumping straight out onto, call it Sublet or Kennedale Parkway or whatever, that's one thing. But when you're dumping these 72 houses into a residential area, at least there is two exits, I suppose. I mean, if best case scenario is the one you're giving us, but that's really my biggest concern. If I lived in the vineyards or even in Magnolia Hills, I wouldn't want that added traffic. That's just my personal opinion. We definitely want you guys to build in Kennedale. We don't want to run you out. We're not trying to do that, but we have terrible roads in Kennedale. We've made a lot of bad decisions in the past. We've been more interested in doing everything except fixing our infrastructure and our roads. And now we're paying the price for it, but just keep adding subdivisions and different homes to it until we can get some of these issues fixed. I just don't know. Like I say, I'm not necessarily against it. Don't take it that way, but I think I need some convincing. I'd like to listen to Republic, see what they got to say about it. That's just because it all boils down to our citizens. That's the bottom line. It's not my opinion. It's theirs. So I'd like to hear from them as well.
I make a comment or two? Okay. As far as the two entries dumping out, I'd like you to think of this as not just I'm putting a subdivision into a subdivision. Those stubs have been there since phase one was designed. The vineyard stub has been there since the vineyard was designed. It was always designed to connect. So think of this as it's phase two of Magnolia Hills that is coming into Kennedale Sublet Road. And then vineyards, that stub has always been there and eventually it'll connect. over to call it sublet at some point in the future. But if you don't get more residents, if you don't get some more density or more tax dollars, you're not going to have the tax dollars to improve these roads. So more homes, more tax dollars. Hopefully you'll have the ability to improve these roads in the future. We're looking at improving Kennedale, call it sublet. Luckily Arlington's working on that, but these will be delivered around the same time. So a large traffic issue that we're concerning with this subdivision is going to be fixed around the same time that we're delivering this project. But we have 3 points of access out of this, but it was always planned for somehow this to connect into phase one. Would love to have done it at the same time at the very first phase, had the traffic study done all of that, but Mr. McClellan wasn't ready to sell at that point. But I think that, with the traffic study at our platting time, you'll see that it really will suffice sublet road, and then call it sublet to the south and then the exit out of Vineyards. I think that 152 lots sounds like a lot, but it's really not with 3 different exits.
So do you think, city manager, do you think, call it sublet can be completed? I mean, we've been talking about doing it for how long? We've even gotten a bond put together for the money to do it, but nothing's happening. I don't even know where we're at on it.
We're in the process of getting the rest of the easements purchased. And then once we get that ready, we're ready to go to construction.
Okay.
We're budgeted, ready to go for 2023.
I mean, dumping more houses, dumping more cars, more traffic onto that road as it stands, it's almost a nightmare, really. So we've got to make a decision to move forward on that road. We got to get that road done. If we're gonna start approving these subdivisions, we've got to get these roads fixed. I mean, that's all there is to it. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Jen, would you like to make any comments?
I'm not an R4 person.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't vote for Magnolia 1.
I remember.
So we'll just start there. The houses look great. They sold fast and they're doing that everywhere. I don't care what city you're in. I don't care where you're building. If you build it, they will come. That's what's happening. Kennedale is 6 square miles. That's all we have. That's it. So we're not Grand Prairie. We're not Arlington. We're not Mansfield. And for me, and I've said this over and over, it's quality, not quantity. Driving through those, and I understand people are buying them. I get that. I get it's a buyer's market. It's a developer's market. And wherever you can build, you're going to build them and they're going to sell. I don't have an issue with that. I understand that. Just for Kennedale, I'm not for these small developments. I think that it's better. The quality is lower density. And you mentioned the sublet road being redone by Arlington. It is going to be redone, but it's going to be way down the road. It's not going to really help your traffic at all where it dumps out on sublet on Walkout Way. Are you talking about down by Albertsons
Talking
or?
about this section up to the 287.
But
the right
yeah,
section.
it's not going to go all the way up to your subdivision. Right?
Our understanding, we are at Wildcat Way.
Right, but the new road doesn't go up that far.
My understanding is it connects from where it stops at the retail center back to Wildcat Way. That's my understanding.
No,
No,
No, it'll go to the roughly the 1200 block of sublet. So
Right.
where our divided roadway ends,
right,
where that will pick up.
okay, so
Correct.
it'll pick up where the divided roadway, connect the 2 divided roadways together.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
so we'll help a traffic issue.
Down there, but it's not
Well,
going
if
to
you
help.
have the flow through, it won't back up as much. If you have 2 lanes going into 1 lane. going into 2
Correct.
lanes,
It's just not going to help right there at the
But
roundabout.
it'll help it from backing up all the way to that roundabout.
Okay, I'll go with
Yeah.
you on that.
Yeah, it
Oh.
will. It'll help the flow through. I
Yeah.
just went through, I couldn't get off on 20, I couldn't get on 30, and I couldn't get on 183 today because they were all backed up
Well, you're,
somewhere
eventu-
down the road, or somewhere down the road to one lane.
yeah, you're eventually gonna squeeze into one lane right there, no matter what. You're going from 2 to 1 in front of your subdivision, and that's not changing. So that's where I stand. I do appreciate that I agree with everything Gary said, and I appreciate the due diligence that you've done in advance of this. I really do, and the conversations that you've had in advance of presenting. And that's the only comments that I have. And I am interested in hearing our public as well. That have waited so patiently to speak, both
Yeah.
for those that are for and against, that have waited patiently to speak.
I have one more question for you, sir,
Yes, sir.
before you step away. Given that the majority of the lots are the 50-foot width, would you guys be willing to making the 50-foot the minority of the lots and increasing the width to either the 60 or 70-foot threshold?
I don't have the ability to make that statement today.
Sure.
I financially, right now, as the way it stands today, no, it doesn't. The deal wouldn't work. Like we can't. Costs have gone up quite a bit, as we all know.
Certainly.
I don't want to push these houses into the 600, 700, like, I don't want to push them into something that is out of the market. The way it stands right now, it would not, I could not answer that today. If that's, I just can't.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, do you have any comments?
No comments.
And the mayor has no comments. Okay. So. Like this now. Yeah. Okay, now. Ms. Lewis, you're a very patient person. Thank you. Okay, now we're gonna go into public hearing. And so it's open, and we would ask Ms. Lewis to come up and make her comments known.
Hello. My name is Krista Lewis. I'm at 1312 Tucker Lane, which is actually in Magnolia Hills, Phase 1. Am I supposed to say my phone number too? Or- No, okay, let's make sure. Sorry, bear with me. I'm a little nervous with public speaking. First of all, I want to say that nothing I say is personal towards anybody or anything. When we signed back in January of 2021 with Windsor Homes, we were one of the first 10 people to sign. And it took until June of this year, so 18 months to build our house. So I am currently opposing phase 2. And I wanted to give you some reasons. I kind of wrote them down, but they're in no particular order. Actually, one of the things that we were told when we first signed by all of our family who lives in Kennedale over on Kevin Miller Road, they said, don't sign there, it floods. So I don't know if I'm seeing different things than everybody else. I have seen it flood. We went ahead and went against our family and signed. Our house is beautiful, but it has not rained much since we've lived there. So I am concerned about the flooding issue. Just by doing my own research, I'm concerned about that. And from hearing, what Mr. Connor has to say, and from the planning and zoning meetings, the first meeting, they actually denied changing the zoning because of that. So I feel like there's something going on there. Secondly, we're a little bit concerned about our HOA having to pay for ponds that would be on other people's properties. Just the concern for the future, maybe not present, but in the future, if somebody came in and bought those properties and it was on their own property, could they change the ponds? I haven't had any clarification on any of that. And just with our HOA money going towards that, it's concerning. Oh, my phone's dying. And so, like I mentioned, it took 18 months for my house to be built from January 2021 of signing the contract to June of 2022. So my main concern currently for the present is living in a construction zone for the next 5 or so years. They said that they want to start development in 2023, that it would take about a year to complete the development. And then after that, it would take about 3 to 4 years to sell the houses. And I agree, it's going to take that long because it took 18 months to sell or to purchase our home. And we were one of the first 10 people to purchase. And they are still building. My next door neighbors are still building their houses and it's loud, y'all. It's really loud. They come out there at 7 o'clock in the morning with their music, with their drilling, with the yelling and all of that is very loud.
You had it 3 minutes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
You went through 3 minutes.
Well, anyway,
No problem.
that's where I'm at. So anyway, thanks for listening and I hope you'll excuse me. My son starts kindergarten tomorrow.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Laura Ford, Ms. Ford.
Hello, my name's Laura Ford. I live at 305 Colette Sublet. I have lived in Kennedale for over 60 years, and we have owned this property for 47 years. I can state fact, not research, that we have never had any flooding in that area. The only flooding we have had is the back of my property that you saw where the cows were. And that is because of vineyards, the vineyards. When they constructed that, the water runs down to the back of my property. These are factual things, and the tanks are man-dug tanks that we dug ourselves. We dug ours, Mr. McClellan dug his. We dug these and they are man-made tanks, stock tanks. And we have not had any floodings there. The traffic on Colette Sublet is bad, but it's not from the Magnolia Hills Phase 1. It's from opening up a dead-end street at the end of Colette Sublet and everybody in Kennedale taking a shortcut to get to Kennedale Sublet Road. It's not from the Magnolia Hills. As far as the Magnolia Hills Phase 2, there's going to be an outlet to Mansville Cardinal. There'll be one to Little School Road, and there'll be 2 outlets to Colette Sublet that will go over to either Sweeney Hyde or Kennedale Sublet. The smaller lots that seems to be a concern, it seems to be this is what people actually want. They don't want the larger lots. They don't want the maintenance and the upkeep of taking care and mowing larger lots. They prefer the smaller lots. And I think I think you can see that from the way the houses in Magnolia Phase 1 has sold. They have, when one's built or before they're built, they're sold. And this is what the younger generation is wanting. I'm not one for development. I am a country girl and I like the land. I like the space, but everybody doesn't like that. And I think that as far as benefiting Kennedale, I think this is a good fit for Kennedale. I think we can leave this land in agriculture. Like I say, I've had it for 47 years. Mr. McClellan's had his for over 60 years, and we can leave it in agriculture. But the city of Kennedale is not going to gain much revenue on agricultural land. You can take 3 houses, this Magnolia Phase 2 addition, and gain more revenue and more taxes off of those three houses than you're going to gain off of our agricultural land taxes in the next 3 years. So I think it's a good fit for Kennedale. I think it's a good fit for the growth and for the revenue that's coming into Kennedale. I think it possibly will lower our taxes in the future, our property taxes. And I think that's what the citizens are wanting. Thank you.
Board, certainly do thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Roy?
My name's Roy Bainig. I live at 1020 Kennedale Sublet. Just so you know what piece of that property is mine up there. Basically where the little blue part is, that's the back of my property. All those trees in there are mine. I have two concerns. One is I don't like the R4 zoning simply because the houses are way too close together. And I did a little, most of y'all don't know me, but I'm a numbers guy. I did a little estimating on July 27th, when the three houses down in Rendon burned. Based on ways, it should have taken our fire department 9 minutes to get there. And I talked to them, they said it took them, they were there within 15 minutes after it started, and three houses were on fire and they couldn't do anything about it at that point. If you build these houses in R4, they're going to be literally closer together than those houses were in Rendon. And if one of them catches on fire, I did an estimate on ways it takes to get to the back of Magnolia Hills now, it takes 6 minutes. So I'm going to say, okay, let's say they're there in 10 minutes. You could have 4 or 5 houses burning by the time they get there based on what happened in Rendon. And what bothers me about that too is if the wind's blowing from the east, all that grass area in between my house and where this subdivision is going wouldn't take long to get to those trees, which would probably take my house too. So I think y'all need to be concerned about safety, because getting to this property with a fire truck is going to take too long for them to get there and make it safe for the people that live there, plus the people around there. Second thing is, as far as drainage goes, so when the vineyards were built, that big retention pond right there, I didn't like that was going to be there, because all the property from that 50 acres drains out of that retention pond onto my property. And the engineers said, it'll never be a problem. We're going to build concrete barriers there to make sure the water slows down and doesn't erode your property. Well, the creek back there has just gotten bigger since that subdivision's been put there. And as far as water goes this year, actually it wasn't this year, it was last year. One of the times when it rained, I went back there and looked because I was interested in seeing how wide that creek was. That creek was probably about 1.5 times the width of this room, water going in the back of my creek back there. And partially of that's because of vineyards, but the other part is because of the drainage from the direction of Magnolia Hills. And with the more infrastructure the more houses you build there and the more concrete you put there, the more water is going to go down that creek area. And that's going to be going on my property. And it's just like that creek used to be 100% dry almost all year. There's water in my creek almost all the time now. Not because it's rained, but because everybody waters their yards. The water runs off from the driveways and streets into all those little ponds, and then has to go to the big pond. And guess what? Where it goes from there, it goes on my property. So that property used to always be dry, but now there's water there all the time. And by adding this subdivision, we're just going to increase the amount of water that goes to my property. Anyways, that's the two things I had. Y'all need to be concerned about the safety and fire, because if any of those houses, once these are built, caught on fire being so close together, that'll be on y'all for changing it to R4.
So that's all I had to say.
Roy, certainly thank you for your comments. Mr. Ekman, am I pronouncing that correct? You may have left, okay, on 406. Okay, he's left, okay. Well, I believe that gets the public meeting segment. So I'm gonna close it at about 9:53. I sure do appreciate y'all's comments and everything. Because after all, y'all the one that owns this place. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Do I have a motion at this point? Council?
I would make a motion to not approve the P and Z case 2210.
Do I have a second?
I would second.
Thank you. All in favor of the motion passing, say aye. On denial.
That was your motion.
Correct.
This is now. Yeah,
The
okay.
motion denied.
Okay, so it went all the way through. Okay, I missed that one then. Okay. And a second? Or
We already got a
pardon me, there's a
second.
motion and then a second was made by James. Okay. Okay, thank you. Second item on the public hearing.
Got to vote.
Okay, now. Okay. Why don't you do a roll call vote? I can't, guys, you either got to run this thing or I'm gonna run it. If I'm mistaken, then I'll correct it. But it's got, we can't keep jumping around. This is not the way you run a meeting, period. Okay. So we've had a motion. And we've had a second. Okay. Now, all we need is a
Vote
vote. Okay,
for the motion to deny.
for the motion denied, yes, okay. So give me a vote.
Okay. So all in favor of that?
All in favor? Okay. 3 in favor? 2 for. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, you want an extension? I mean, if they, well, we've got 2, we got 3 for, we've got 2 again. Okay, okay. Those that are in favor, please vote with an eye. That's what I just, isn't that not what I said? Okay, stand corrected. 3 have voted that it be denied. Okay, we got that. Okay, I've got 2 other votes that have said that they want it passed. We haven't got the vote. Okay. Okay, okay. Would you care to vote, sir? If you do, say aye. Okay, we got 1 eye, 2 ayes, okay? So we're back down to 3 to 2. Thank you. Second item on the public hearing is conduct a public hearing and consider approval of resolution authorizing funding participation with Texas Water Development Board through their flood infrastructure fund program to assist with the funding for roughly 1,900 linear feet on stream bank stabilization along Valley Lane. Go
Hey,
ahead, sir.
good evening. So the TWDB grant application that we are looking at for a resolution for. This is for the grant application and funding to approve the funding between TWDB and the city of Kennedale for the Valley Lane Infrastructure Project. This is again for that 20% grant that they will be matching for construction phase services for the project. Did you guys have any questions on what you guys would be approving?
No.
Okay. I'm gonna take a 5-minute recess. Starting right now. 9:59.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just being safe. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm safe and sorry. I've eaten about it.
Okay, we're adjourning after a break. And we are on the second item on the public hearing is conduct a public hearing and consider approval of a resolution authorizing funding participation with Texas Water Development Board through their flood infrastructure fund programs to assist with funding for roughly 1,900 linear foot of stream bank stabilization along Valley Lane. Okay. We'll now open a public hearing. 10:10, okay. We have no speakers. I will close public hearing at 10:10. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to appoint escrow agent for a $432,000 grant from the Texas Water Development Board to the Valley Lane project.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, passed. All matters under the consent agenda have been previously discussed, require little or no deliberation, or are considered to be routine by the council. If the discussion is desired, then an item can be removed from the consent agenda, authorizing the city manager to implement each item in accordance with the staff's recommendations.
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a second? All in favor? Okay. Okay, approval.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I didn't vote. I was against it. I would
Okay.
like to speak of
okay,
number 3 before I can actually vote.
okay. Speak.
Thank you. So, city manager, Mr. Hall, Chief Hall, can I get a little bit more information on this? Because if I'm reading this correctly, are we raising pricing or is this?
If I could interrupt just as a
Of course.
point of order. What you really need to do is withdraw item 3 from the consent agenda and then allow the rest of the items to be voted on. 1, 2, 4, and 5 can all be voted on, and then we'll come back and do the item that you want to discuss.
Of course, I'd like to make a motion to go ahead and remove item 3
Three, okay.
on the consent agenda.
He wanted to, the council member wishes to discuss item 3, so he wants it taken off of the consent agenda, so you guys can still approve, and that's the next order of business.
Made a motion. Approved. Voted.
He wanted to take it out, so just to be clear, let's take it out, let him discuss it, and then
I mean, I'm just trying to get
I
caught
understand.
up here. I don't-
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda less than item number 3 for discussion.
Oh, is there any
Those 3's
discussion?
gotta come out.
We need to vote
Have-
on
have a
on the
motion.
new motion.
Do I have a motion?
I'll second the revised motion.
So everything goes except for 3, and 3 is been pulled off.
Now we need to call for a vote on the amended motion.
Okay, we need a vote on the amended motion. All
It's
all in favor?
unanimous.
Okay.
And now it would be proper to take up item number 3 as a discussion item.
Okay. Item number 3 is.
Item number 3 Looking at this, and please forgive me for my stupidity, but are we raising pricing with this Atmos Midtex 2022 RNR filing?
There- that's the reference that- reference what we covered before. Maybe that we hired. And this is what they're.
So for clarification, the steering committee that we approved to join had two deliverables. One was for electrical, other was for gas. And so this is the portion that is specifically related to Atmos gas. And upon review of this document, it appeared that Atmos was requesting an additional system-wide revenue of 141 million. And the steering committee was able to negotiate that down to 115 million.
That's correct.
How much would, if I'm reading this correctly, and again, forgive me if my stupidity. Am I understanding that this would raise customer rates by 5 cents per month? For residential, I'm sorry.
460.
$4.60 or 6.7%.
Is this in line with today's rates?
Yes, based off of our steering committee that spoke on our behalf.
Is there any way that we can negotiate for a no rate increase or?
No, sir.
This is the new rate across the board, am I right?
That's correct. It's not just Kennedale, it's everyone that part of the steering committee.
See, what they're trying to do is they're trying to go back and pick up the storm losses
Yes.
all the way back. And when I say all the way back, that means 2 years. They don't amortize it over a 5-year period, which would lessen the impact. They just do it for 2 years and then move, and they got an approval on it.
With all due respect to the steering committee and to this board, 2021, that winter storm, it was horrible. A lot of people died. But I don't think that we should be charging our residents a higher amount because of that. I mean, it impacted most of Texas. 95% of Texas was impacted by that. And with this type of a rate increase for residential customers in a heavy inflation year and with costs soaring across the board, I don't think I can accept this.
Let me ask a question to our council on this. In the event that council were not to approve this, what happens then? On a positive note, with inflation, that $4.60 and the dollar being down doesn't make that big of a difference.
I'm concerned for what comes after
I
this.
say that in jest.
Yes, I understand. I'm just concerned what comes after this. First gas, then water, then we have electricity rates. I mean, I'm not one to put more of a burden on our residents than what needs to be put on them. Jan, please say something.
I would just say where we can, we will, but in this situation, I think this is out of our hands.
Okay. I'd like my objection to be on the record, but I understand what needs to be done.
I think we all share the sentiment that increasing rates on anything is contrary to our desire and wishes as a as a collective council, and if I am then wrong in speaking for the group on that, let me know. But unfortunately, in this situation, we've done our due diligence by joining the steering committee to mitigate the impact to our residents as much as possible.
100%.
The, one of the things you make, well, forget that. Pardon me.
You go ahead and make a motion for, okay,
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve consent item 3.
I'll second that.
Just a second, okay, all in favor? Okay. Okay, if there's no other items to be removed, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda
We'll adjourn.
is we've already
Motion
done
to
that?
adjourn.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Who gave the motion to adjourn?
I did.
Jan gave the motion.
I'll second.
Someone, I forward.
okay.
Motion passes unanimously.